The morning of my father's funeral dawned with a cruel perfection, clear blue skies stretching endlessly above Fort Carson, Colorado, the kind of day he would have appreciated. Colonel Franklin Barron deserved nothing less than picture-perfect weather for his final honors. At least, that's what I believed at the time. I stood ramrod straight in my black dress as they performed the ritual that marks the end of a distinguished military career, the three-volley salute cracking through the air, the bugler playing taps, the meticulous folding of the American flag into a tight triangle. When General Maddox approached to present me with that flag, his face was a mask of solemn respect. On behalf of the President of the United States Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service. He intoned, his voice carrying across the cemetery. I accepted it with trembling hands, our eyes meeting briefly. Was there something there? A flicker of, what? Guilt? Apprehension? Or was I simply looking for shadows where there were none? Your father was one of the finest men I've ever known. Emily, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. His sacrifice will never be forgotten. 6 weeks had passed since the phone call that shattered my ordinary life in Rosebridge, North Carolina. I was in the middle of teaching my high school history class about the Vietnam War, ironically, the very conflict that had shaped my father's early military career, when the principal appeared at my classroom door, her face grave. A classified incident abroad, they called it. No details provided. No body viewable due to the nature of the circumstances. Just a flag-draped coffin and assurances that Colonel Franklin Barron had died serving his country with honor. At 58, my father had been nearing retirement, yet he'd accepted one final assignment, one last mission that had somehow cost him his life. I'd spent those 6 weeks in a fog of grief, numbly accepting condolences, arranging travel to Colorado, and trying to make sense of the sudden void in my life. My father had raised me alone after my mother's death when I was just 7. He was my rock, my moral compass, my hero. And now he was gone, or so I thought until that note appeared under his medals. After the ceremony, mourners gathered at the officers' club for the reception. I moved through the crowd in a daze, clutching both the folded flag and the crumpled note hidden in my palm. Every conversation, every sympathetic touch on my arm, every murmured condolence now felt suspect. Who had written the note? Was it a cruel joke? A delusion from someone who couldn't accept my father's death? Or the terrible truth? Emily. A hand touched my elbow, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Major Ethan Cross, my father's former protege. Tall and imposing in his dress uniform, his face was a study in controlled emotion. I wanted to express my deepest sympathies. Your father was more than a superior officer to me. He was a mentor, a guide. I studied his face, searching for any sign that he might be the note's author, but his dark eyes revealed nothing beyond appropriate grief. Thank you, Ethan, I managed. He spoke highly of you. A shadow crossed his face. I wish I could have been there. Maybe things would have ended differently. Before I could probe what he meant, General Maddox appeared at Ethan's shoulder. Major Cross, I need you for a moment, he said, then turned to me with practiced sympathy. Emily, please help yourself to something to eat. It's been a long day for you. As they walked away, I watched them intently. Their heads were bent close together, their conversation clearly private. The general's hand gripped Ethan's shoulder with what looked like warning rather than comfort. They're thick as thieves these days, came a raspy voice beside me. I turned to find an older man in a civilian suit, leaning heavily on a cane. His weathered face seemed vaguely familiar. I'm sorry, do I know you? I asked. Alex Raines. Served with your dad in Nam. Sergeant, retired. He didn't offer his hand, instead giving me a quick, almost imperceptible nod. Frank was a good man. Too good for his own damn safety. Something in his tone made my pulse quicken. What do you mean by that? His eyes darted around the room before landing back on me. Not here. Too many ears. He pressed something into my palm, a business card with just a phone number written on it. If you want to know more about what really happened to your father, call this number, from a public phone, not your cell. And Emily? His voice dropped even lower. Trust no one wearing stars or bars. Before I could respond, he melted back into the crowd, leaving me even more confused and frightened than before. That night in my hotel room, I laid out everything I knew. A mysterious note claiming my father was alive, a cryptic warning about the general, and now a retired sergeant implying there was more to my father's death than I'd been told. Sleep was impossible. I paced the room, the folded flag and that cursed note on the bed, tormenting me with possibilities too terrible to fully contemplate. If my father wasn't dead, where was he? And why would the United States military, the institution to which he devoted his entire life, lie about it? I remembered our last conversation 3 months earlier. He'd called from somewhere he couldn't name, his voice tight with something I'd interpreted as mission stress. "Emily," he'd said, "remember what I always taught you about truth. It's the foundation of honor," I'd replied automatically, quoting the mantra he'd instilled in me since childhood. "Yes, and sometimes the truth makes powerful enemies." There had been a long pause. "If anything ever happens to me, don't trust the official story. Look deeper." I'd laughed nervously. "Dad, you're freaking me out. Is everything okay? Just promise me, Emmy." He'd used my childhood nickname, something he rarely did anymore. "I promise," I'd said, more to humor him than anything else. Now, staring at the note that challenged everything I'd been told, I wondered if that conversation had been his way of preparing me for exactly this moment. Had he known he was in danger? Not from enemy, combatants, but from someone within his own ranks? Dawn found me sleepless but resolved. I would find the truth, whatever it might be. I owed my father that much, and if he was somehow still alive, I would move heaven and earth to find him. What I didn't realize then was how dangerous that search would become, or how deeply the conspiracy surrounding my father's disappearance actually went. Back in Rosebridge, North Carolina, autumn was painting the trees in fiery hues as I returned to the small craftsman house where I'd grown up. It felt both comforting and alien now, a shrine to a man who might not actually be dead. My father's presence lingered in every corner. His reading glasses still on the side table, his favorite mug in the dish rack, his jacket hanging by the door as if he might walk in and claim it at any moment. I called in for a personal leave of absence from my teaching position, citing grief and the need to handle my father's affairs. Principal Martinez was understanding. Everyone was when you were dealing with the death of a decorated military hero. Except my father might not be dead at all. I hadn't called the number Sergeant Rains had given me yet. Something held me back. Caution, perhaps. Or the fear that pursuing this mystery might lead me somewhere I wasn't prepared to go. Instead, I began my own investigation, starting with my father's home office. Colonel Franklin Barron had always been meticulously organized, a trait that extended to his personal records. His office was a testament to military precision. Books aligned perfectly on shelves, files arranged. In alphabetical order, desk surface clear, except for a framed photo of me at my college graduation, and another of him and my mother on their wedding day. I began systematically searching through his filing cabinet, computer files and desk drawers, looking for what exactly? I wasn't sure. Anything that might give credence to the note or hint at what had really happened during his last mission. Most of what I found was mundane. Bank statements, insurance policies, military commendations. But in the bottom drawer of his desk, I discovered a false panel concealing a small fireproof lockbox. My hands trembled as I used the key I'd found in his personal effects to open it. Inside was a burner phone, a small notebook filled with what appeared to be coded entries, and a sealed envelope with my name written on it in my father's precise handwriting. I tore it open, heart pounding. "Emmy, if you're reading this, then things have not gone according to plan. I've stumbled onto something that powerful people want to keep hidden. I can't write details here. It's not safe. But know this. If you ever hear that I've died, especially under classified or unclear circumstances, do not believe it. I've made arrangements. Sergeant Alex Rains knows some of it. But be careful who you trust. The corruption goes higher than you can imagine. Remember the cabin? The combination is your birthday backward. I love you more than anything in this world. That's why I have to do this." Dad, I sat back, letter clutched in my shaking hands, as the implications washed over me. The note at the funeral wasn't a cruel joke or the ramblings of a delusional person. It was the truth. My father had known he might be targeted and had left me this breadcrumb trail to follow. The cabin he referenced was our family's old hunting lodge in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a place we hadn't visited in years. Whatever he'd hidden there, he believed it was important enough to mention in what amounted to a contingency letter. I was about to examine the notebook when I heard a car door slam outside. Moving to the window, I peered through the blinds to see a black SUV parked across the street. Two men in dark suits emerged, looking distinctly out of place in our quiet suburban neighborhood. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Ms. Barron? A male voice. Unfamiliar. This is Captain Lewis with Army Special Investigations. We'd like to speak with you regarding your father's personal effects. We'll be at your door momentarily. The line went dead. I looked back out the window. The men were already crossing the street toward my house. My instincts screamed danger. I quickly gathered the lockbox contents, shoving everything into my bag. Then I slipped out the back door and through the gap in the fence that led to my neighbor's yard just as the doorbell rang. Mrs. Henderson, a 70-year-old widow who had been my babysitter throughout childhood, was startled to find me appearing in her kitchen. Emily, what on earth? Mrs. H, I need a huge favor, I interrupted breathlessly. There are men at my house asking questions about Dad. I'm not ready to talk to them. Can I slip out through your front door and borrow your car? Her roomy eyes narrowed with concern, but she'd known my father for decades and had her own healthy distrust of government officials. Without asking questions, she handed me her keys. Take it as long as you need, honey. I'll tell them you left hours ago if they come asking. I gave her a quick hug. Thank you. I'll call you later to explain. 20 minutes later, I was driving Mrs. Henderson's ancient Buick north toward the mountains, constantly checking the rearview mirror for signs of pursuit. My mind raced with questions. Who were those men really? Was the Army truly investigating something about my father? Or was this part of whatever conspiracy he'd uncovered? Most importantly, if my father was alive as the note claimed, where was he being held? And by whom? I pulled into a rest stop and, using the burner phone from my father's lockbox rather than my own cell, finally dialed the number Sergeant Rains had given me. It rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. Took you long enough. Sergeant Rains, this is Emily Barron. I know who it is. His voice softened slightly. Are you somewhere safe? I think so. For now, men came to my house. Military intelligence, or pretending to be. They're searching for something your father had. Did you find it? I found a letter and a notebook. He mentioned a cabin. Don't tell me more over the phone. He cut in sharply. Meet me tomorrow, Blue Ridge Diner off Highway 421, 10 a.m. Come alone and make sure you're not followed. Wait, I said, desperately. My father, is he really alive? There was a long pause. Last time I saw him, yes. But that was 2 months ago and he wasn't in good shape. They're keeping him somewhere even I can't access. Who's they? People who were supposed to be on our side. His voice turned bitter. Your father threatened to expose something they've been doing, something illegal. Instead of letting him talk, they made him disappear. And General Maddox? The note said he lied. Maddox is neck deep in this. He and your father were close once, but money and power change men. Listen, we can't talk more now. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The line went dead, leaving me clutching the phone and staring at the mountains in the distance. Somewhere in those ancient, mist-shrouded peaks was a cabin that held the next piece of this puzzle. And beyond that, possibly my father. Alive but imprisoned by the very institution he'd served faithfully for decades. I started the car again, determination replacing fear. I would find the truth. I would find my father. And whoever was responsible for this would pay, no matter how many stars they had on their shoulders. What I didn't know then was that I was driving, straight into a trap, one that had been set the moment I'd received that first note at the funeral. The Blue Ridge Mountains loomed before me as I navigated Mrs. Henderson's Buick, along winding roads that grew increasingly narrow and treacherous. Autumn had transformed the landscape into a tapestry of crimson and gold, but I barely noticed the beauty surrounding me. My mind was fixed on a single purpose, reaching the cabin and uncovering whatever my father had hidden there. The old hunting lodge sat on 3 acres of woodland, isolated from neighbors and accessible only by a dirt road that hadn't seen maintenance in years. As I pulled up to the weathered structure, memories flooded back. Weekends spent fishing in the nearby stream, evenings by the fireplace while Dad told stories of his early military days, the shooting lessons he'd insisted upon despite my initial reluctance. Self-reliance is freedom, Emmy, he'd say as he taught me to handle his Remington with respect and precision. I approached cautiously, scanning the area for any sign of disturbance or surveillance. Finding none, I climbed the creaking porch steps and retrieved the spare key from inside the rusted coffee can hidden under a loose floorboard. Another childhood memory that served me well now. The cabin's interior was musty and cold, untouched since our last visit 3 years ago. Dust covered every surface, and small animal tracks dotted the floor. I moved directly to the stone fireplace where, behind a loose brick in the back wall, my father had installed a small safe when I was a teenager. The combination was my birthday backward, just as his letter had indicated. Inside, I found a sealed waterproof packet containing a USB drive, a military ID card that wasn't my father's, and a handwritten list of names with dates and locations next to them. The final item was a detailed map of what appeared to be a military installation, with certain areas circled in red ink. Across the top, my father had written, Black Echo Facility, Wyoming. I pocketed these items and was about to close the safe when I noticed something else, a small compartment in the back that I hadn't seen initially. Inside was a loaded Glock 19 with 2 extra magazines and a note. For emergencies only, hope you never need it. My father had never been one for dramatic gestures. If he'd left a weapon, he truly believed I might need protection. The thought sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cabin's temperature. I was gathering everything to leave when a floorboard creaked behind me. I whirled around, the Glock instinctively in my hand, to find myself face to face with a tall, lean man whose face I knew only from photographs. Sergeant Alex Rains. Easy there, Professor, he said, hands slightly raised. Your father taught you good trigger discipline, I see. I didn't lower the weapon. How did you find me? Our meeting isn't until tomorrow. Your father told me about this place. When you called, I figured you might come here first. His eyes flicked to the gun, then back to my face. I followed you to make sure no one else did the same. Prove you're really Alex Rains, I demanded. A faint smile touched his weathered face. Your 6th birthday. Frank got deployed last minute. You were heartbroken until a package arrived. A teddy bear wearing army fatigues that played a recording of your dad reading your favorite story when you squeezed its hand. Frank made me promise never to tell anyone he'd cried while recording it. I slowly lowered the gun. That story wasn't something anyone could have known unless my father had shared it. Why didn't you just approach me directly? Why all the cloak and dagger? Because 2 members of our old unit are already dead, he said bluntly. Marcus Delgado, apparent suicide, except Marcus was Catholic and would never have taken his own life. James Wilson, car accident that conveniently destroyed his laptop and phone. Both had been in contact with your father shortly before his death. My blood ran cold. They're killing people who know the truth. They're eliminating loose ends, he corrected grimly. Your father discovered something during his last deployment, something involving General Maddox, Major Cross, and what appears to be an unauthorized CIA black operations program. Arms sales to groups we're officially opposing, targeted assassinations without congressional oversight, massive amounts of money disappearing into offshore accounts. And they silenced him for it? Rains nodded. Frank was old school, believed in the chain of command, doing things by the book. He gathered evidence, planned to take it all the way to the Joint Chiefs, maybe even Congress. Before he could, he disappeared during an extraction mission in Eastern Europe. The official story was that he died in an ambush. But you saw him alive after that, I prompted. His face darkened. 2 weeks after his supposed death, I received encrypted coordinates from an old emergency channel Frank and I had established during Nam. When I got there, an airstrip outside of Bucharest, I found him drugged, restrained, being loaded onto a private jet, with U.S. military markings. I couldn't intervene without getting us both killed, so I documented everything and started digging. And what did you find? A paper trail leading to a facility called Black Echo, supposedly a psychiatric treatment center for military personnel with classified knowledge. In reality, it's where they put people who know too much but are too high profile to simply eliminate. His eyes met mine. Your father is a war hero, Emily. Killing him outright would raise too many questions, but discrediting him as mentally unstable and keeping him sedated and isolated, that's their playbook. I felt sick. So the funeral? The honors? It was all for show? An empty casket and a cover story. He nodded toward the items I'd retrieved from the safe. I'm guessing Frank left you the evidence he'd gathered. It's not complete. He was still putting pieces together when they took him, but it's enough to start unraveling their operation. So, what do we do now? I asked, struggling to process everything. First, we get somewhere safe, my cabin in Tennessee. Then we analyze what you found and reach out to the one person who might help us, Senator Catherine Hayes. She chairs the Armed Services Committee and was a JAG officer before politics. Frank trusted her. And then? Raines's expression was grim. Then we find your father and expose what Maddox and his people have been doing before they realize we're on to them and move Franklin to somewhere we can't reach. We left the cabin separately, Raines first to ensure the road was clear, then me following 30 minutes later. As I drove back down the mountain, autumn sunlight filtering through the trees, I felt both terrified and strangely calm. The truth about my father was worse than I'd imagined, but at least there was hope. He was alive. And now I had a mission as clear and defined as any he'd ever undertaken: find him and bring him home. What I didn't yet understand was how deep the conspiracy went or how many lives it had already claimed. By sundown, I would learn firsthand just how far General Maddox would go to protect his secrets. I never made it to Raines's cabin in Tennessee. 15 miles outside of Rosebridge, a black SUV rammed Mrs. Henderson's Buick from behind, sending me spinning across the rain-slicked highway. Before I could recover, a second vehicle boxed me in, forcing me off the road entirely. Men in tactical gear emerged, weapons drawn. My father's Glock was in my bag on the passenger seat, but I knew reaching for it would be suicide. Instead, I raised my hands as they approached. Emily Barron? One stepped forward, his face obscured by a balaclava. You need to come with us, now. Under whose authority? I demanded, fighting to keep my voice steady. National security, came the curt reply. You're in possession of classified materials. They weren't police or regular military. No identifiers, no attempt to read me my rights. These were the same type of men who had come to my house earlier, and I had no doubt about their true purpose. They weren't here to arrest me. They were here to make me disappear, just like my father. As they pulled me from the car, a deafening crack split the air. One of the men crumpled to the ground, then another. Gunfire erupted from the tree line, precise and methodical. I dropped to the pavement, covering my head as bullets pinged against metal and shouts filled the air. Then a hand grabbed my arm. Move! It was Raines, materializing beside me like a ghost. Stay low and run for the trees. Now! I scrambled after him as chaos erupted behind us. Reaching the dense woodland, we kept running, deeper into the forest until the sounds of the ambush faded. Only then did Raines slow, leading me to where an old pickup truck was concealed under camouflage netting. You followed me? I gasped, trying to catch my breath. I told you, 2 unit members already dead. I wasn't about to let Frank's daughter become the third. He uncovered the truck. They've been tracking your phone, and probably Mrs. Henderson's car too, once they figured out you had it. How did they know about the cabin? About what I found? They've been monitoring your father's property since his death. When you showed up, they alerted their extraction team. He opened the truck door. Get in. We need to disappear before their backup arrives. As we drove along back roads, I tried to process what had just happened. Those men, did you kill them? Raines's face remained impassive. I served 3 tours in Vietnam and 20 more years in special forces after that. I don't miss when I shoot. His eyes briefly met mine. This isn't a game, Emily. These people have killed to keep their secrets, and they'll kill again. If you want to walk away now, I understand. I can drop you at a bus station, give you some cash. No, I interrupted firmly. That's my father they have. I'm not walking away. A hint of a smile crossed his face. You're definitely Frank's daughter. He pulled out a burner phone and handed it to me. Call Mrs. Henderson. Let her know you're safe, but don't give details. Then we'll destroy this phone and get a new one. After assuring my elderly neighbor that I was unharmed, a conversation that raised more questions than it answered, I asked Raines, where are we going now? Plan B. I have a friend in Charleston, former Navy SEAL turned private security contractor. He owes me, and his place is secure. We'll analyze what your father left, then make contact with Senator Hayes. Hours later, I arrived at a nondescript warehouse near Charleston's harbor. Inside, behind reinforced doors and an elaborate security system, was a surprisingly comfortable living space. A tall, muscular man with close-cropped gray hair greeted Raines with a firm handshake. Marcus, Raines said, thanks for this. You saved my ass in Kandahar. Consider this partial repayment. Marcus turned to me, his assessment quick and professional. Ms. Barron, sorry about your father. He was a good officer. He's not dead, I replied. At least, I don't think he is. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly as he looked at Raines, who nodded confirmation. Well, that complicates things, Marcus said. But it explains why you two need a safe house. We set up at a table in what appeared to be a command center, complete with multiple computer monitors and communications equipment. I laid out everything from my father's safe, the USB drive, the ID card, the list of names, and the facility map. The ID belongs to Dr. Adrian Kelso, Rains explained, examining it. Military psychiatrist who supposedly died in a helicopter crash 2 years ago. Your father must have discovered he's actually working at this Black Echo facility. Marcus connected the USB drive to an air-gapped laptop, one never connected to the internet. It contained hundreds of files, financial records showing money transfers to offshore accounts, mission reports with sections redacted or altered, surveillance photos of General Maddox meeting with known arms dealers, and recorded conversations between Maddox and Major Cross discussing operations never authorized by Congress. Jesus, Marcus whispered as we scrolled through the evidence. They've been running a shadow operation for years. Assassinations, weapons deals, intelligence sold to the highest bidder, all under the guise of official missions. And using Black Echo to silence anyone who catches on, Rains added grimly. I studied the facility map my father had marked. This is where they're keeping him? In Wyoming? Most likely. It's remote, classified, and technically doesn't exist on any official registry. The perfect place to hold someone indefinitely. Rains pointed to areas my father had circled. These appeared to be security weak points and possible entry routes. So we break him out, I said, the words coming automatically. Both men stared at me. It's not that simple, Marcus began. That facility will have elite security, motion sensors, armed guards. We're not storming a black site, Rains interrupted. That's suicide. We need leverage first. Something that makes it too costly for them to keep your father. The evidence, I realized. We take this public. Carefully, Rains cautioned. Release everything at once and they'll just deny it. Call it fake news or foreign disinformation. We need to be strategic. Senator Hayes, I suggested, remembering our earlier plan. If she's as trustworthy as you think, she could initiate an official inquiry. Rains nodded slowly. It's risky, but it might work. I'll try to arrange a meeting through back channels. Until then, we stay here, stay quiet, and prepare. That night, lying on a cot. In the warehouse's makeshift bedroom, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father, not as the strong, confident colonel I'd known, but drugged and imprisoned, wondering if anyone was coming for him. I remembered how he'd always been there for me after Mom died, how he'd balanced military discipline with gentle understanding, teaching me to be strong without losing compassion. I'm coming, Dad, I whispered into the darkness. Just hold on. I didn't know then that someone had already betrayed our location, or that General Maddox himself was preparing to ensure that neither I nor anyone else would ever find Colonel Franklin Barron again. Dawn broke over Charleston Harbor, painting the water in shades of gold and amber. I'd managed only a few hours of restless sleep before, joining Rains and Marcus in the warehouse's main room, where they were already reviewing security footage from cameras positioned around the perimeter. All clear so far, Marcus reported, pouring me a cup of strong black coffee. I've got a contact reaching out to Senator Hayes' office. Should hear back this morning. Rains spread the facility maps across the table. While we wait, let's go. Through this again. Black Echo is built into the side of a mountain, approximately 30 miles from the nearest town. One road in, heavily monitored. The official designation is Strategic Psychiatric Evaluation Center, supposedly for military personnel with classified knowledge who've experienced psychological breaks. And unofficially, I asked, a place to make people disappear without killing them, he answered grimly. Perfect for high-profile targets whose deaths would raise too many questions. Like decorated war heroes, I murmured, thinking of my father. Marcus's secure phone rang, breaking the tension. He answered, listened briefly, then covered the mouthpiece. Senator Hayes has agreed to meet. Today, 1400 hours, at her family's hunting cabin in the Low Country. No staff, no security detail, just her. Relief washed over me. She's willing to help? She's willing to listen, Rains cautioned. That's all we know for now. 3 hours later, we were driving through the marshy landscapes of South Carolina's Low Country, following coordinates to a secluded cabin accessible only by a narrow dirt road. The isolation made it perfect for a clandestine meeting, but also perfect for an ambush. I don't like this, Marcus muttered as we approached. Too exposed. Catherine Hayes served with Frank in the JAG Corps before she went into politics, Rains replied. They had history. If anyone in Washington would help us, it's her. The cabin came into view, a modest two-story structure overlooking a peaceful stretch of marsh. A single black SUV was parked outside. Marcus circled our vehicle once before parking, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. "I'll go in first," Rains decided. "If it's clear, I'll signal for you to follow." I watched anxiously as he approached the cabin, hand resting near the concealed weapon at his hip. He knocked, waited, then disappeared inside. 2 minutes later, he reappeared in the doorway and waved us forward. Senator. Catherine Hayes was not what I expected. In her mid-50s, she had sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of no-nonsense efficiency that reminded me of my high school principal. She wore simple black slacks and a blue blouse. No power suit or political polish here. "Emily," she said, extending her hand, "I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. Your father spoke of you often, and with great pride." "You knew him well?" I asked, shaking her hand. "We served together in the JAG Corps, and later I helped with some of his more sensitive operations when I was on the Intelligence Committee." Her eyes shifted to Rains. "Alex tells me Frank may still be alive. That's a hell of an accusation to make against our military leadership." "It's not an accusation. It's the truth," I replied, opening my bag to reveal the USB drive and documents. "This is evidence my father gathered before his disappearance. General Maddox and others have been running unauthorized operations, weapons sales, assassinations, millions in misappropriated funds." The senator's expression remained carefully neutral as she examined the materials. For nearly an hour, she reviewed documents, listened to audio recordings, and studied the facility maps without comment. Finally, she sat back, exhaling slowly. "If these are authentic," she said, "this goes beyond criminal activity. This is treason." "They are authentic," Rains insisted. "Frank risked everything to compile this evidence. And now they're holding him at this Black Echo facility." I added, "We need your help to get him out and expose what Maddox and his people have been doing." Senator Hayes paced the small cabin, deep in thought. "You understand what you're asking? Going against General Maddox means challenging the entire military establishment. He has friends in every branch of government, including Congress. So you won't help us?" My voice cracked with disappointment. She stopped pacing and fixed me with a penetrating stare. "I didn't say that. Franklin Barron was one of the most honorable men I've ever known. If he discovered corruption at this level, I believe him." She took a deep breath. "But we have to be smart about this. One wrong move, and we all disappear into places like Black Echo." "What do you suggest?" Marcus asked. "I'll need copies of everything. Secure copies that remain undiscovered if something happens to any of us. Then I'll convene a closed session of the Senate Armed Services Committee subpanel on intelligence oversight. It's small, just 5 senators, all with top security clearance. We review the evidence there, then move to suspend Maddox pending investigation." "And my father?" I pressed. "Once Maddox is removed from command, I can authorize a team to secure the Black Echo facility and free any personnel being held there improperly." She held up a hand as I started to thank her. "But understand this. If we move against Maddox and fail, we're all finished. These people have killed to protect their operation. They won't hesitate to do it again." "We understand the risks," I said firmly. Senator Hayes nodded. "I'll need 48 hours to set everything in motion. Until then, stay hidden, stay vigilant, and most importantly, stay alive." As we prepared to leave, the senator pulled me aside. "Emily, I need to ask, are you certain your father is still alive? The evidence of his survival is circumstantial at best." I thought of the note at the funeral, Rains's testimony, and the elaborate precautions my father had taken. "I believe he is. I have to believe it." Her eyes softened with something like sympathy. "Then let's hope you're right, for all our sakes." We left the cabin with renewed purpose and a timeline. 48 hours until the senator convened her committee, until the wheels of justice began turning against General Maddox and his conspirators. All we had to do was stay safe until then. But as we drove back toward Charleston, a news alert pinged on Marcus's phone. He swore softly as he read it. "What is it?" I asked. "Senator Hayes' office just announced she's taking emergency medical leave, effective immediately. Apparent heart condition requiring immediate treatment." A chill ran through me. "That's not possible. We just left her. She was fine." "They got to her," Rains said grimly. "Somehow they knew about our meeting and they've neutralized her. Not with violence, that would be too obvious for someone of her stature, but they've removed her from play. So we've lost our only ally in Washington, Marcus concluded. And tipped our hand to Maddox, Rains added. He knows we have the evidence now. He knows we're coming for him. So what do? I asked, fear and frustration building inside me. Rains' expression hardened. Plan B. We take the evidence public. All of it at once. Major news outlets, social media, everywhere. Create so much noise they can't possibly contain it. That's incredibly risky, Marcus warned. Without official backing, they'll paint us as conspiracy theorists or foreign agents. And once we go public, we lose any element of surprise for rescuing Colonel Barron. We don't have a choice, I said, making the decision that would change everything. My father risked his life to expose this corruption. If we do nothing, his sacrifice means nothing. What I didn't realize was that General Maddox had anticipated this very move. Even as we drove back to Charleston planning our media offensive, he was implementing his contingency plan, one that would turn me from a grieving daughter seeking justice into a national security threat, hunted by the very country my father had served. The attack came just after midnight. No warning, no chance to prepare, just the sudden crash of the warehouse's security alarm, followed by the distinctive pop of flashbang grenades. Marcus was on his feet instantly, weapon drawn. Back exit, move! He shouted, pushing me toward the rear of the warehouse as the front doors exploded inward. Rains appeared from the shadows, already armed. They found us. Take the tunnel. I'll hold them off. No, I protested. We stay together. There's no time to argue, Marcus growled, shoving a backpack into my hands. The evidence is in there. Get it out. Get it public. That's the mission now. Before I could respond, gunfire erupted from the front of the warehouse. Tactical teams in full gear poured in, their movements precise and coordinated. These weren't local police or even FBI. These were military operators. Marcus pulled aside a heavy storage shelf, revealing a narrow passage. This leads to the docks. There's a boat prepped and ready. Take it to the coordinates programmed in the GPS. You'll find help there. But, Emily, Rains cut me off, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Your father survived because he prepared for every contingency. So did we. This isn't over. It's just moving to the next phase. Now go. The intensity in his eyes left no room for argument. I ducked into the passage as more explosions rocked the warehouse. The last thing I saw before Marcus sealed the entrance was Rains taking position behind a concrete pillar, weapon raised, preparing to buy me time with his life if necessary. The tunnel was narrow and damp, barely lit by emergency lights that cast everything in an eerie red glow. I ran as fast as the confined space would allow, the backpack clutched tightly to my chest. Behind me, muffled gunfire and shouting filtered through the thick concrete walls. Then silence. A silence that terrified me more than the noise. After what felt like an eternity, I reached a metal ladder leading up to a hatch. Climbing with shaking hands, I emerged onto a small wooden dock where, as promised, a sleek motorboat was moored. I untied it, started the engine with the keys hidden under the seat, and pulled away from the dock just as searchlights began sweeping the area. The GPS was pre-programmed to a location 10 miles downriver, a small inlet obscured by overhanging trees. As I guided the boat through the dark waters, my mind raced with questions. Who had betrayed our location? Was it someone connected to Senator Hayes? Had Marcus and Rains survived? And most pressingly, what was I supposed to do now, alone with the evidence but no allies or resources? The inlet appeared ahead, barely, visible in the moonlight. I cut the engine and let the boat drift silently into the shadowy recess. As I secured it to a half-submerged tree stump, a voice called softly from the shoreline. Professor Barron? I froze, one hand reaching for the gun Rains had insisted I carry. Easy, the voice continued. Alex sent me. Firefly Protocol. My hand relaxed slightly. Firefly Protocol was the authentication phrase Rains had established for emergency contacts. Still cautious, I asked, "Who are you?" A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman in her 30s with close-cropped hair and the alert posture of someone with military training. Lieutenant Jessica Vance, ma'am, former Navy intelligence. I worked with your father on his last 3 deployments. How do I know I can trust you? She smiled faintly. Your father called you Emmy, even though you hated the nickname after turning 16. He kept a photo of you at your college graduation in his deployment kit, and he once told me his greatest regret was that your mother never got to see the remarkable woman you became. The personal details, things only someone who truly knew my father would know, convinced me more than any military credentials could have. I stepped onto the shore. Rains and Marcus? Her expression tightened. Unknown. The warehouse was hit by what they're calling a joint terrorism task force. Official story is that they were neutralizing a domestic threat. Terrorism? I echoed in disbelief. That's absurd. Not according to the news. She handed me a smartphone open to a breaking news. Headline: Military intelligence disrupts anti-government plot led by disgruntled veterans and civilian accomplice. My grainy driver's license photo appeared below the headline. They're calling us terrorists, I whispered, the implications sinking in. They've completely flipped the narrative. It gets worse, Jessica said grimly. They're claiming the evidence you've gathered was fabricated as part of a disinformation campaign. General Maddox gave a press conference an hour ago, expressing deep concern about radicalized individuals targeting military leadership with false accusations. But the evidence is still our only hope, she finished. Alex anticipated something like this. That's why we had contingency plans. Come on, we need to move. This location won't be secure for long. She led me to a nondescript sedan parked on a dirt track beyond the tree line. As we drove through the night, she explained the situation in more detail. Maddox has activated what we call a burn protocol, discrediting his accusers before they can present their evidence. By painting you as a radical or mentally unstable, anything you release will be dismissed as the ravings of a terrorist. So we've already lost, I said, despair washing over me. Not yet, Jessica countered. We still have one card to play, Major Ethan Cross. My father's former protege? He's part of Maddox's inner circle. Yes, but according to your father's intelligence, Cross may be having second thoughts. He joined Maddox's operation believing it was sanctioned black ops, necessary evils for national security. When he realized they were acting purely for profit and power, he started looking for a way out. And you think he'd help us now? Risk everything? With the right leverage, yes. She glanced at me. That's where you come in. Cross respected your father enormously. If anyone can convince him to turn on Maddox, it's Franklin Barron's daughter. But we'd have to find him first, and without exposing ourselves. Jessica nodded toward an upcoming exit. As it happens, Major Cross is attending a military charity gala tomorrow night in Richmond. Alex had planned for us to approach him there. A public event? That's incredibly risky now that my face is all over the news. Yes, she agreed. But it's also our best remaining option. Cross is Maddox's right hand. He knows where your father is being held, knows the security protocols, and has the access codes we'd need to get him out. As we drove north toward Virginia, I examined the contents of the backpack. Besides the evidence we'd already reviewed, I found new items Marcus must have added: cash, a change of clothes, hair dye, colored contact lenses, and a complete set of identification documents for someone named Sarah Matthews. Your cover for the gala, Jessica explained. Marcus was very thorough. The past tense cut through me. Do you think they're dead? Rains and Marcus? She kept her eyes on the road. Alex Rains survived 3 tours in Vietnam and 2 decades of Special Forces operations. He's as hard to kill as they come. If anyone could make it out of that raid alive, it's him. Her tone suggested she was trying to convince herself as much as me. By dawn, we had reached a small cabin outside Richmond, another safe house in the network my father and his allies had established. As Jessica secured the perimeter, I collapsed onto a narrow bed, physically and emotionally exhausted. Yet sleep brought no peace, only nightmares of my father imprisoned in suffering, of Rains and Marcus, falling under a hail of bullets, of General Maddox standing over my own grave, declaring another threat neutralized. I awoke with fierce resolve burning through my veins. If Maddox wanted to paint me as an enemy of the state, so be it. I would become exactly what he feared most, someone with nothing left to lose and the truth as her weapon. The charity gala was less than 18 hours away. By this time tomorrow, I would either have gained a powerful ally in Major Cross, or I would have lost my last chance to save my father. The Richmond Officers Club gleamed with polished brass and crystal chandeliers as Richmond's military elite gathered for the annual Veteran Support Foundation Gala. Women in evening gowns and men in dress uniforms or tuxedos mingled beneath patriotic banners, their laughter and conversation creating a pleasant buzz that filled the grand ballroom. I stood before the mirror in the club's lavatory, barely recognizing myself. Jessica had transformed me into Sarah Matthews, defense contractor representative, with auburn hair cut in a sleek bob, brown contact lenses, and expertly applied makeup that subtly altered the appearance of my cheekbones and jawline. The black cocktail dress and heels completed the disguise, formal enough for the occasion, but not so distinctive as to draw attention. "Remember," Jessica had instructed during our preparation, "you're not hiding. You're hiding in plain sight. Confidence is your best camouflage. Walk like you belong there." She would be stationed outside in a vehicle, monitoring communications and ready to extract me if things went wrong. I was on my own inside, armed only with a small recording device, my father's evidence on a secure flash drive, and whatever persuasive skills I could muster. Taking a deep breath, I rejoined the gala, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter more for prop than refreshment. My eyes scanned the crowd, seeking the one face I needed to find. Major Ethan Cross stood near, the center of the room, impressive in his dress blues, a collection of medals gleaming on his chest. He was engaged in conversation with an older couple, his posture relaxed yet commanding. I'd only met him briefly at my father's funeral, but I remembered thinking then how much he physically resembled my father in his younger days. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the same air of quiet authority. I circulated slowly through the room, working my way closer without making a direct approach. The flash drive felt heavy in my clutch bag, a small device containing evidence that could destroy careers, expose crimes, and possibly save my father's life. If Cross refused to help, my backup plan was to anonymously release everything to the press, but Jessica had warned that such a move would likely trigger Maddox to clean house, potentially including any loose ends like my father. Finally, I positioned myself near the bar, directly in Cross's path as he moved to refresh his drink. "Single malt, neat," he ordered, then glanced my way with a polite nod. "Impressive turnout," I commented, gesturing toward the crowd. "The foundation does good work for veterans," he replied. "Worth supporting." "I imagine Colonel Barron would have appreciated that," I said, watching his reaction carefully. He was always an advocate for veterans' care, wasn't he? Cross's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a slight tightening around the eyes, a momentary pause before he responded. "You knew Colonel Barron?" "Not as well as you did, Major Cross." I met his gaze directly. "But well enough to know he deserved better than an empty casket and a cover story." His hand tightened on his glass. "I don't believe we've been introduced, Ms. "You know who I am," I said quietly. "And I need 5 minutes of your time. Somewhere private. It concerns Operation Widow's Shadow." The color drained from his face at the mention of the classified operation name. His eyes darted around the room, then back to me. "This is neither the time nor the place." "It's exactly the time," I interrupted, "because my father is running out of it at Black Echo." For a moment, I thought he might simply walk away, or worse, call security. Instead, he drained his whiskey in one swallow and set the glass down with deliberate care. "The terrace. 2 minutes. Don't follow me directly." He moved away, stopping, to exchange pleasantries with other guests before eventually slipping through the French doors to the outside terrace. I waited, counting to 60 before taking the same path, my heart hammering against my ribs. The terrace was dimly lit and mercifully empty, offering a view of the club's manicured gardens below. Cross stood at the stone balustrade, his back to me, posture rigid with tension. "You have my attention, Ms. Barron," he said without turning. "Though I must say the auburn hair doesn't suit you." "Where is my father?" I demanded, skipping any pretense. Now he turned, his expression unreadable in the half-light. "Do you have any idea the danger you're in right now? The danger you've put me in by approaching me here? There are at least 3 of Maddox's personal security detail inside." "I know exactly what's at stake," I replied. 2 men who were helping me are either dead or captured. I've been labeled a domestic terrorist, and my father is being held prisoner by the very institution he served faithfully for decades. So, forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned about protocol at the moment. Cross studied me for a long moment. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." "I'm desperate," I corrected, "and you're the only person who can help me now." "What makes you think I would?" I removed the flash drive from my clutch. "Because I have copies of everything my father gathered about Operation Widow's Shadow. The weapon sales to extremist groups, the assassinations of foreign officials, the millions skimmed from black-budget operations. Your name appears in those files, Major Cross." His jaw tightened. "Is this blackmail?" It's an opportunity, I countered, to do the right thing. My father believed in you once. He told me you were one of the few officers with both the intelligence and the moral compass to lead the next generation of military leadership. That was before... He stopped himself abruptly. Before what? Before you joined. Maddox's private enterprise? Before you helped imprison my father when he threatened to expose it? Cross stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You have no idea what you're talking about. The situation is far more complicated than you realize. Then explain it to me, I challenged. Tell me why my father is being held in a black site facility instead of testifying before Congress. Tell me why good men are dying to keep this secret. For a moment, something like regret flickered across his features. Your father discovered something he wasn't supposed to. Not just about Maddox, but about people far more powerful. He wouldn't back down, wouldn't look the other way. Maddox argued that detaining him was the merciful option. Merciful? I repeated incredulously. The alternative was elimination, Cross said bluntly. I convinced Maddox that Franklin Barron was too high profile, that his death, his real death, would trigger too many questions. A chill ran through me despite the warm evening air. So you saved his life by condemning him to indefinite imprisonment. I bought him time, Cross corrected. Time I've been using to build my own case, gather my own evidence. Maddox trusts me, gives me access. I've been documenting everything for the past 8 months. I stared at him, hope and suspicion warring within me. Why should I believe you? Because I'm the reason you got that note at the funeral, he said simply. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You? He nodded. I couldn't approach you directly, too risky, but I needed to set things in motion to let you know your father was alive. I knew once you started digging, you'd find the breadcrumbs he left behind. So, all of this, you've been working against Maddox from the inside? Trying to, he admitted. But it's slow going. These people are careful, compartmentalized. And now with you labeled a terrorist and Rains and his friend captured, Maddox is accelerating his timeline. He's planning to transfer your father to a facility overseas, somewhere even I won't have access. When? I demanded, alarm coursing through me. Tomorrow night, a private medical transport flight from the Wyoming facility to a location I haven't been cleared to know. The timeline was even tighter than I'd feared. Then help me get him out before that happens. Cross shook his head. It's not that. Simple. Black Echo has military-grade security, restricted airspace, armed guards. You can't just walk in. But you can, I interrupted. You have clearance. You have access codes. And the moment I help you, my cover is blown. Everything I've been working toward. My father doesn't have time for your long game, I cut in fiercely. Once he's moved overseas, we both know we'll never find him. Again. Cross fell silent, internal conflict clear on his face. Finally, he said, even if I wanted to help, we'd need a team, resources, a secure extraction plan. We had all that until Maddox's men raided our safe house, I replied bitterly. Actually, came a familiar gruff voice from the shadows. You still do. We both whirled toward the sound. From behind a large decorative planter emerged a figure I'd feared I might never see again, Sergeant Alex Rains, very much alive, though sporting a nasty gash across his forehead. Rains, I breathed, relief washing over me. You made it out. Barely, he acknowledged, keeping his voice low. Marcus wasn't so lucky. He's alive, but in custody. His cold gaze fixed on Cross. So, Major, are you in or out? Because this train is leaving the station with or without you. Cross looked between us, his decision visibly crystallizing. What you're suggesting is treason. No, I countered. What Maddox is doing is treason. What we're suggesting is justice. A tense silence hung in the air for several heartbeats. Then Cross reached into his inner pocket and removed what appeared to be a security badge and a small flash drive of his own. Black Echo facility credentials, he explained, handing them to Rains. And everything I've gathered on Maddox's operation. Access codes change daily. I'll text them to you tomorrow before the transfer. He checked his watch. I need to get back inside before my absence is noticed. Why are you helping us? I asked, still not entirely trusting his sudden cooperation. Cross's expression softened, slightly. Your father saved my life in Afghanistan. Not just physically. He kept me from crossing lines that would have destroyed who I am. I owe him this. He turned to leave, then paused. The transport is scheduled for 2200 hours tomorrow. You'll have a narrow window between guard shifts at 2030. Don't be late and don't get caught. If you do, I was never here. After he disappeared back into the gala, I turned to Rains. Can we trust him? We don't have much choice, he replied pragmatically. But for what it's worth, your father always said Cross was a good man caught in a bad situation. Let's hope he was right. As we slipped away from the officers' club, a strange calm settled over me. After days of running, hiding, and desperate planning, we finally had a clear objective and the means to achieve it. Tomorrow night, we would attempt to rescue my father from one of the most secure black sites in the country. What I didn't yet understand was that Major Cross had omitted a crucial detail about the Black Echo facility, one that would make our mission far more complicated than we could possibly imagine. Wyoming's Wind River Range stretched before us, jagged peaks silhouetted against the darkening sky as our small chartered plane began its descent. Below, endless forests and rugged terrain created the perfect natural barrier around what officially didn't exist, the Black Echo facility. Remember, Jessica said, checking her weapon one final time. We have a 30-minute window at most, in and out. The primary objective is extracting your father. Everything else is secondary. The team Jessica had assembled was small but elite. Herself, Rains, a former Army Ranger named Decker who specialized in security systems, and a combat medic called Torres, who had served with my father in Iraq. And me, the civilian professor who had no business participating in what amounted to a military operation. Emily should stay with the plane, Rains argued, not for the first time. She has no tactical training. I'm going, I stated firmly. My father might be disoriented, heavily medicated. Seeing a familiar face could make all the difference. Jessica nodded reluctantly. She stays in the middle of our formation, wears body armor, and follows orders without question. Clear? I agreed, though the weight of the Kevlar vest felt foreign and cumbersome. The small airstrip where we landed was private, unmarked, and paid for in cash. One of many contingencies Jessica had arranged through contacts I chose not to inquire about too deeply. From there, we transferred to an unmarked medical transport vehicle Decker had acquired from a nearby hospital. Our cover, if stopped, was a routine patient transfer to a specialized psychiatric facility, not entirely false, given our mission. Cross came through, Jessica announced, checking her secure phone. Access codes received, along with the exact location of Colonel Barron's room. And we're sure these codes are good? Torres asked, eyebrow raised skeptically. We'll find out soon enough, Rains replied. The Black Echo facility appeared deceptively ordinary from the access road, a modern 3-story structure, built into the mountainside with minimal external lighting and a small parking area for staff vehicles. Only the double perimeter fence topped with razor wire and the discreet security cameras hinted at its true nature. Decker navigated us to the service entrance where Cross had indicated security would be lightest during shift change. As we approached the first checkpoint, I held my breath, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. Medical transport from Casper Regional, Jessica stated calmly to the guard, presenting falsified paperwork. Patient transfer for Dr. Kelso. The guard checked the documentation, then the access code Jessica provided. After an agonizing moment, he nodded and raised the barrier. Proceed to intake. Stay in the marked lanes. As we drove through, Rains murmured, First hurdle cleared. Don't celebrate yet. The intake area was a loading dock designed for patient transfers, clinical, sterile, and monitored by cameras. Decker parked precisely where indicated, and Torres moved to the rear of the vehicle, preparing our stretcher for the supposed patient we were delivering. Comms check, Jessica whispered, adjusting her earpiece. We each confirmed. Our communication links were functioning. Emily, stay between Rains and me, Jessica instructed. If anything goes wrong, do exactly what we tell you, immediately and without question. Understood? I nodded, my mouth too dry for words. We entered the facility with practiced professionalism, Jessica and Decker in front with the paperwork, Torres guiding the empty stretcher, Rains and I following behind. The interior was hospital-like, but with obvious security modifications. Reinforced doors, limited windows, staff with sidearms poorly concealed beneath lab coats. The first stage went precisely as planned. Cross's access codes got us through 3 successive security checkpoints, each bringing us deeper into the mountain complex. The facility was larger than it appeared from outside, with Multiple subterranean levels accessible only by secured elevators. Third floor, east wing, Jessica murmured, consulting the facility map Cross had provided. Room 314. We entered the elevator, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. As the doors closed, Decker quickly attached a small device to the control panel. Loop feed engaged, he confirmed. Security cameras on. This elevator will show it empty for the next 10 minutes. The doors opened onto a quiet corridor lit with harsh fluorescent lighting. Unlike the more public areas we'd passed through, this section had an undeniable prison-like quality. Numbered rooms with small reinforced windows, electronic locks, and a nurse's station at the far end where 2 staff members were visible. Change of plan, Jessica decided, noting the nurses. Decker, create a diversion. Torres, be ready to subdue if necessary. Non-lethal only. Decker nodded and moved ahead while the rest of us hung back near the elevator. Moments later, alarms blared from the opposite wing, drawing both nurses away from their station. Move now, Jessica ordered. We hurried down the corridor, checking room numbers until we reached 314. Rains used the access card Cross had provided, and the door unlocked with a soft click. Inside, the room was dimly lit and hospital-like, with monitoring equipment and a single bed. And there, thin and pale but unmistakably alive, was my father. Dad, I gasped, rushing forward despite Jessica's attempt to hold me back. Colonel Franklin Barron looked dramatically different from the strong, vital man I remembered. His once robust frame was gaunt, his military short hair now long and streaked with more gray than I recalled. His eyes, when they opened at the sound of my voice, were unfocused and confused. Emmy, he whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. Is this real? I took his hand, tears blurring my vision. It's real, Dad. We're getting you out of here. BP and pulse. Elevated but stable, Torres reported, checking the monitors. They've got him on a cocktail of sedatives and antipsychotics. He's functional, but will be disoriented. Can he walk? Rains asked pragmatically. With support, Torres confirmed, already removing the IV lines and monitoring leads. 30 seconds and we move, Jessica called from her position by the door. Decker's diversion won't hold their attention much longer. My father's grip on my hand tightened. Emily, the evidence. Did you find it? Yes, I assured him. Everything you left for me. We have it all. A shadow of his old determination crossed his face. Maddox. Others involved. Not just him. We know, Rains said, moving to help my father into a sitting position. Cross gave us what you couldn't. Cross. My father repeated, seeming to struggle with the name. Can't trust. Not completely. Before I could ask what he meant, Jessica signaled from the door. Movement at the nurse's station. We need to go now. Torres and Rains supported my father between them as we moved into the corridor. The elevator was only 30 feet away, but those 30 feet suddenly seemed like miles as an alarm began to sound. Not the diversion Decker had created, but a new alert. Patient emergency in 314, announced a mechanical voice over the intercom. Security team to 3rd floor. They've made us, Jessica hissed. New plan. Stairwell, end of the hall, move. We abandoned any pretense of belonging there, running toward the emergency stairs with my father stumbling between his supporters. Behind us, shouting. Voices and running footsteps echoed down the corridor. Where's Decker? I gasped as we crashed through the stairwell door. He'll meet us at the vehicle, Jessica replied, though her tone lacked conviction. Descending the stairs was torturously slow with my father's weakened condition. By the time we reached the ground level, the alarm had escalated to a facility-wide security alert. Red. Emergency lights pulsed through the corridors, and the sounds of approaching security teams echoed from multiple directions. This way, Rains directed, consulting the mental map he'd memorized. Service corridor should lead directly to the loading dock. We followed him through a maze of utility passages, the sounds of pursuit sometimes fading, sometimes growing alarmingly close. My father leaned heavily against me now, his strength failing despite his determined efforts. Leave me, he gasped at one point. I'm slowing you down. Not happening, I replied fiercely. We all leave together or not at all. Finally, the exit door to the loading dock appeared ahead. Jessica peered through the small window, then swore under her breath. Armed guards at our vehicle. At least 4 of them. Options? Rains asked tersely. She thought for a moment. There's a secondary staff parking area on the west side. Smaller, less secured. If we can reach it, we'd need another vehicle, Torres pointed out. One problem at a time, Jessica replied grimly. West exit, now. We changed direction, moving through service corridors that grew increasingly industrial, storage areas, maintenance, rooms, the beating heart of the facility hidden from its clinical exterior. My father was barely conscious now, the exertion and stress overwhelming his weakened system. Almost there, I encouraged him, though I had no idea if it was true. We rounded a corner and found ourselves facing a dead end. A solid metal door marked, "Emergency exit only. Alarm will sound." Perfect, muttered Rains, sarcastically. Jessica assessed the situation quickly. At this point, one more alarm won't matter. We're going through. As she moved to push the door open, it swung inward of its own accord. Standing before us was Major Ethan Cross. For one frozen moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Cross stepped aside, revealing an idling maintenance truck just outside. "You're behind schedule," he said simply. "Cross?" my father mumbled, confusion evident in his voice. "What are you—" "Saving your life, sir," Cross replied. Again, questions later. Movement now. We hurried outside to the truck. Cross helped load my father into the cab, then handed Jessica a set of keys. "Maintenance access road leads to the north perimeter. Gate code is 5591. There's a Forest Service road 2 miles beyond that, will take you to Highway 26. He turned to me. "The evidence, both yours and mine, needs to reach Senator Hayes immediately. Her medical emergency was manufactured, but they're watching her closely." "You're not coming with us?" I asked, suddenly understanding. Cross shook his head. "Someone needs to stay behind, create confusion about where you're heading. Buy you time. They'll know it was you," Rains warned. "Eventually," Cross agreed. "But not before you're clear." My father, momentarily lucid, fixed Cross with a penetrating stare. "Why, Ethan? After everything?" Cross met his gaze steadily. "Because you were right, sir. Always were." He stepped back from the vehicle. "Now go. Don't stop for anything until you reach the coordinates programmed in that GPS." As Jessica started the engine, I impulsively reached out and squeezed Cross's hand. "Thank you." His only response was a curt nod before he disappeared back into the facility. Moments later, new alarms began blaring from the opposite side of the complex. Cross's final diversion. We drove away from Black Echo, following Cross's directions exactly. No pursuit materialized behind us, and within 20 minutes, we had reached the main highway, merging with normal civilian traffic. In the back seat, Torres monitored my father's condition. "He's stable, but needs real medical attention. The drug cocktail they had him on will take time to clear his system. The safe house has medical supplies," Jessica assured me, "and a doctor we can trust." As the facility disappeared behind us, lost in the vast Wyoming wilderness, I held my father's hand tightly. He drifted in and out of consciousness, but each time his eyes opened, they found mine with increasing clarity. "You found me," he whispered during one such moment. "I promised I would," I replied, thinking of our last conversation before his disappearance. "I always keep my promises." A ghost of his old smile crossed his face before he slipped back into exhausted sleep. We had accomplished the impossible, breaking into a black site facility and extracting a prisoner without casualties on either side. Yet, as the adrenaline of the rescue began to fade, a sobering reality took its place. We had my father back, but we were all now fugitives. And somewhere behind us, Major Cross was sacrificing his career and possibly his freedom to give us a chance at justice. What I didn't yet realize was that our escape from Black Echo was not the end of Maddox's pursuit, but merely the beginning of the final, most dangerous phase of his operation to silence the truth permanently. Dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains as our exhausted group reached the safe house, a remote cabin nestled among towering pines, accessible only by a winding dirt road that disappeared beneath fresh snow. The doctor Jessica had promised was already waiting, a silver-haired woman with steady hands and sharp eyes who introduced herself simply as Dr. Chen, retired Army Medical Corps. While she tended to my father in the cabin's back bedroom, the rest of us gathered around a battered kitchen table to assess our situation. Cross bought us maybe 24 hours before Maddox realizes he helped us, Rains calculated, spreading out a map. We need to move the evidence before then. Senator Hayes is still our best option, Jessica insisted, but Maddox will be watching her closely. What about going public? Torres suggested. Release everything to the media. Rains shook his head. Maddox has already painted us as terrorists. Any evidence we release will be dismissed as fabricated. We need official validation, someone with authority to authenticate the documents and recordings. There's another problem, I added, remembering my father's warning. Dad said we couldn't fully trust Cross. What if the evidence he gave us is compromised? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. We had risked everything based on Cross's information. If he had been playing us all along. Let me see what he provided, Rains finally said. I retrieved Cross's flash drive, and Decker, who had indeed escaped the facility and reunited with us at a predetermined rendezvous point, connected it to a secure laptop. What we found was both reassuring and alarming. Detailed financial records linking General Maddox to offshore accounts, surveillance photos of clandestine meetings with known arms dealers, and most damning of all, recorded conversations discussing operations never authorized by Congress. This is legitimate, Rains confirmed after careful review. But there's something else here. Something your father didn't have. He pointed to a folder labeled simply Oversight. Inside were documents bearing the presidential seal and signatures of cabinet officials, authorization papers for Operation Widow's Shadow dating back 3 administrations. My God, Jessica whispered. This wasn't just Maddox. This was sanctioned at the highest levels. That's why Dad said we couldn't fully trust Cross, I realized. He knew Cross was holding back this piece, that the corruption went beyond Maddox. Dr. Chen emerged from the bedroom, interrupting our stunned silence. Your father is stabilizing. The drugs they were using, I've analyzed them. It's a sophisticated cocktail designed to keep patients compliant while maintaining basic cognitive function. He'll need time to fully recover, but his mind is intact. Can I see him? I asked. She nodded. Briefly. He's asking for you. My father looked marginally better than he had at the facility. Some color had returned to his face, and his eyes were clearer. He beckoned me closer as I entered. Emmy, he said, his voice stronger than before. The evidence? Did Cross give you everything? Yes, I confirmed, sitting beside him. Including the oversight documents. Why didn't you tell me how high this went? A sad smile crossed his face. Would you have believed that 3 administrations authorized illegal weapons sales and political assassinations? That our own government created a facility to silence whistleblowers? He shook his head slightly. I barely believed it myself until I saw the documentation. So what do? I asked, frustration building. If we can't trust the government, if we can't trust the media, we trust the American people, he interrupted, grasping my hand with surprising strength. But we need leverage first, something that makes it impossible for them to dismiss or bury this again. What kind of leverage? Marcus, my father said. He's still being held, likely at a federal detention center by now. They'll be interrogating him, trying to learn what he knows and where we might go. So we rescue him too? I asked, incredulously. No, my father replied. We use him as our opening move. Contact the FBI special agent in charge of the Denver field office, Elizabeth Winters. She was JAG when I was in Afghanistan. Tell her Marcus Reynolds is being held illegally under the counterterrorism statute without charges or counsel. Tell her to look at his case personally. Will she help us? She's straight as they come. Once she starts pulling that thread. He closed his eyes briefly, gathering strength. It creates an official investigation. One Maddox can't easily disappear. I relayed this information to the others, who debated its merits intensely. Contacting an FBI agent carried enormous risk, but we were rapidly running out of options. If your father trusts her, it's worth trying. Jessica finally concluded. But we do it carefully. No direct contact. We drafted a message to Agent Winters, including just enough classified details about Marcus's detention to pique her interest without revealing our location or full evidence. Decker used a series of proxy servers to deliver it electronically, making it untraceable. Now we wait, Rain said grimly, and prepare to move at a moment's notice. The response came faster than any of us anticipated. Just after nightfall, Jessica's secure phone, the one only Cross had the number for, buzzed with an incoming message. FBI raided Denver Black site, she read aloud, her voice tense. Marcus in protective custody. Winters demanding answers from Joint Chiefs. Maddox mobilizing cleanup operation. Get to Washington immediately. Evidence must reach Senate Intelligence Committee. The message was signed simply, EC. Cross, I breathed. He's still helping us. Or leading us into a trap, Torres countered. My father, who had insisted on joining us despite Dr. Chen's objections, settled the debate. Cross is many things, but not a traitor to his country. If he says Washington, we go to Washington. Your father isn't strong enough for commercial travel, Dr. Chen objected, and every airport, train station, and bus terminal will be watching for you all. Then we drive, Rains decided. Switching vehicles frequently, taking back roads. It'll be slower, but safer. And I know exactly who to contact when we get there, my father added. Admiral James Hollister, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. We served together in Desert Storm. He's one of the few at that level I trust completely. The Joint Chiefs? Jessica looked skeptical. They're part of the same system that authorized these black operations. Hollister wasn't part of the Oversight Committee for Widow's Shadow, my father explained. He's been deliberately kept out of the loop because Maddox knew he wouldn't approve. And as chairman, he has the authority to initiate a full investigation that not even the president can easily shut down. As we prepared to leave, loading supplies and plotting our route, I found myself wondering about Major Cross. Had he sacrificed everything to help us escape? Or was he playing a deeper game, one whose endgame we couldn't yet see? The answer would come sooner than any of us expected, and with consequences that would shake the foundations of military and civilian leadership alike. We leave in 30 minutes, Rains announced. Full blackout protocols. No phones, no credit cards, no electronic footprint of any kind. As Dr. Chen helped my father into the SUV, Jessica had acquired through channels I didn't ask about. He squeezed my hand. Whatever happens, he said quietly, remember that the truth is worth any price. It's the foundation of everything else. I know, Dad, I replied, thinking of all the times he'd taught me that lesson throughout my childhood. It's the foundation of honor. His answering smile held a shadow of his old strength, the Colonel Barron I remembered, the man who had never compromised his principles, even when it cost him everything. What we didn't know then was that Maddox had already anticipated our move toward Washington, and was implementing his final, desperate countermeasure to ensure we never arrived. The journey to Washington became a blur of back roads, small motels paid for in cash, and constant vigilance. We traveled in 2 vehicles, switching cars every few hundred miles through a network of veterans my father and Rains had served with, men and women who asked no questions when told their former commanding officer needed help. My father grew stronger each day, the drugs clearing from his system, his military bearing gradually returning. By the time we reached Pennsylvania, he was able to walk unassisted, his mind fully clear and focused on the mission ahead. Maddox will have realized by now that we're heading to Washington, he observed during a strategy session in yet another anonymous motel room. He'll be expecting us to approach Admiral Hollister. So we need an unexpected approach, Jessica concluded. That's when Torres suggested what seemed like madness at first. What if we went public before we went official? Not with the evidence itself, but with Colonel Barron, alive and in person. The plan that emerged was audacious. A press conference on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, announced only 30 minutes beforehand to select journalists known for their integrity. My father would appear in full dress uniform, with Rains and Jessica flanking him in their military attire. I would deliver a brief statement explaining the situation, then direct reporters to sealed evidence packets being simultaneously delivered to the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Department of Justice, and Admiral Hollister's office. It's incredibly risky, Decker warned. You'll be completely exposed. That's the point, my father replied. Once my face is on every news network in America, they can't make me disappear again without confirming everything we're alleging. The final approach to Washington, D.C. on a misty spring morning felt surreal. For so long, our focus had been on survival, on staying hidden. Now we were deliberately stepping into the spotlight. We separated into our assigned roles, Torres and Decker delivering evidence packets, Jessica arranging the press through trusted contacts, Rains securing the perimeter around the memorial, and my father and I preparing to face the nation. Are you nervous? I asked him as we changed into formal attire in a hotel room 3 blocks from the mall. Terrified, he admitted with a wry smile, straightening his tie, but also at peace. Whatever happens today, the truth will finally be heard. At precisely 10 a.m., we emerged onto the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. A small but growing crowd of journalists gathered below, alerted by Jessica's carefully worded message about a presumed dead military officer, making a statement about systemic corruption within defense leadership. The gasps were audible as my father appeared in his full dress uniform, medals gleaming in the spring sunlight. Camera shutters clicked frantically, and within minutes, live trucks from major networks began arriving. I stepped to the hastily assembled microphones, my prepared statement in hand. But before I could speak, a commotion at the perimeter drew everyone's attention. Through the crowd strode Major Ethan Cross, also in full dress uniform, flanked by military police. My heart sank. He had betrayed us after all. But then I saw something unexpected. General Maddox himself, being led in handcuffs behind Cross. Cross approached the microphones, his expression solemn. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I am Major Ethan Cross, United States Army. I am here to corroborate Colonel Franklin Barron's testimony and to announce that General Everett Maddox has been placed under military arrest for treason, conspiracy, illegal detention of military personnel, and violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. A stunned silence fell over the crowd, broken only by the continuous click of cameras. Cross continued, approximately 1 hour ago, Admiral James Hollister received compelling evidence of these crimes and authorized General Maddox's immediate detention pending court-martial. Similar evidence has been delivered to the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Department of Justice, triggering what will be the most significant military corruption investigation in modern history. He stepped back, gesturing for my father to approach the microphones. As Colonel Franklin Barron stepped forward, back straight and head high despite all he had endured, a spontaneous applause broke out among the gathered press. My name is Colonel Franklin Barron, he began, his voice strong and clear. 8 months ago, I discovered evidence of unauthorized black operations being conducted by elements within our military leadership. When I attempted to report these findings through proper channels, I was abducted, falsely declared dead, and imprisoned at a classified facility designated Black Echo in Wyoming. He detailed the operation with military precision, the weapons sales, the assassinations, the offshore accounts, and finally, the facility, created to silence whistleblowers. With each revelation, the crowd of journalists and onlookers grew, drawn by the unprecedented nature of what they were witnessing. I stand before you today not as an accuser, but as a witness, my father concluded. I have served this country faithfully for 40 years. I believe in our institutions, our Constitution, and the fundamental honor of our armed forces. What I discovered was not a reflection of those institutions, but a cancer within them, one that must be excised if we are to remain true to the principles we swear to defend. As he stepped back, I moved to his side, taking his hand in mine. Questions erupted from the press corps, but before we could respond, Cross returned to the microphones. Colonel Barron and his daughter Emily have risked everything to bring this truth to light, he stated. They will now be placed under protective custody as material witnesses in the coming investigation. I assure you they will be available to answer your questions once their safety is guaranteed. With that, we were escorted through the crowd to waiting vehicles, not as fugitives this time, but under official protection. In the car, my father turned to Cross. You took an enormous risk, he said quietly. Cross nodded. When you disappeared, I had a choice. Turn a blind eye or find the truth. It took me longer than it should have, but I finally made the right decision. Admiral Hollister? My father asked. Furious but resolute, Cross confirmed. The moment he saw the evidence, he moved immediately to secure Maddox and protect you. There will be attempts to contain this, to limit the damage, but with the press already involved and evidence in multiple hands, the full investigation is inevitable. The following weeks unfolded in a whirlwind of closed hearings, public statements, and gradual revelations. The Black Echo facility was shut down, its remaining prisoners, including other whistleblowers from various agencies, freed and rehabilitated. General Maddox and 12 other high-ranking officers faced court-martial. 4 civilian officials resigned. Investigations expanded to similar facilities on 3 continents. Through it all, my father testified tirelessly, his strength and clarity returning more fully each day. I remained by his side, occasionally adding my own testimony about our journey to bring the truth to light. 3 months after that dramatic press conference, my father and I stood on the porch of our Rosebridge home, finally cleared to return to civilian life. The media frenzy had subsided, though occasional reporters still sought interviews about what newspapers had dubbed the Black Echo conspiracy. What will you do now? I asked him as we watched the sunset from Rocking. Chairs, a scene of ordinary peace that had once seemed impossible. Teach, perhaps, he replied thoughtfully. share what I've learned about the price and value of integrity. What about you? Going back to your high school history classes? I shook my head. I've been offered a position with the newly formed Military Transparency Commission. They want civilian oversight with knowledge of military operations. Keeping the powerful honest, he observed with a smile. Seems fitting. A car approached down our quiet street, a government vehicle that stopped at our driveway. Major Cross, now promoted to lieutenant colonel, emerged in civilian clothes. Just checking in, he said as he joined us on the porch. The Senate committee has finished its final report. They're implementing new oversight. Protocols for all classified operations. Black sites like Echo will require multiple authorizations and regular inspections. It's a start, my father acknowledged. It's more than that, Cross countered. It's a fundamental shift. Your stand changed things, sir. People who were afraid to speak up aren't afraid anymore. As Cross departed and twilight deepened around us, my father reached over and took my hand. Your mother would have been proud of you, Emmy. I know I am. I just did what you taught me, I replied. That truth matters. That honor isn't just a word. And sometimes, he added softly, one person with the courage to stand for what's right can change everything. As darkness fell over Rosebridge, I thought about our journey, the funeral where it began, the note that changed everything, the desperate flight, the impossible rescue, and finally, the triumph of truth over power. We had lost friends along the way, faced dangers I could never have imagined, but in the end, the foundation held. The truth had emerged, as it always does, eventually, and with it came not just justice, but the chance to rebuild something better on that foundation of honor. They tried to bury a man who carried the truth, my father murmured, almost to himself. But honor has a way of surviving even when the world tries to silence it. I squeezed his hand in the gathering darkness, thankful beyond words that we had both survived to see this moment, and whatever moments would come next.